Have you ever noticed how easy it is to lose your sense of direction when too many voices are involved? Advice from friends, opinions from family, messages from social media, expectations from work. And somewhere, in the middle of all that noise, it can become difficult to hear the one voice that matters most. Your own. Most people don't lose touch with their inner compass overnight. It usually happens slowly. One outside opinion at a time. One comparison at a time. One moment where someone else's expectations begin to feel louder than your own instincts. Today I want to talk about the difference between external noise and your inner compass. Because learning to recognize that difference can change the way you make decisions for the rest of your life. Hello and welcome to Thrive Within. I am your host, Marc Bucksouth, a life coach, educator, and someone who's passionate about helping you live more fully, honestly, and aligned with who you really are. This podcast is your space for real talk and focused coaching on things like confidence, purpose, boundaries, self-doubt, and personal growth. So whether you're on a walk, taking a break, or just giving your brain a moment to breathe, I am so glad you're here. Let's get into it. External noise shows up in many forms. Sometimes it's advice. Sometimes it's expectations, and sometimes it's comparison. You see someone else succeeding in a certain way, and you start wondering if you should be doing the same thing. Or you hear someone's opinion about the right path and what it looks like. And slowly, those voices begin to influence how you think about your own decisions. And at first it may seem helpful, but over time, too many outside voices begin to drown out your own internal guidance. Comparison is one of the most powerful sources of noise, because comparison doesn't just change how we see others, it changes how we see ourselves. When we compare our lives to somebody else's path, it becomes easy to question our own direction. We start wondering, am I behind? Have I made the wrong decision? Should I be doing something different? But the truth is that comparison rarely gives us clarity. Most of the time, it only creates confusion, because someone else's path was never meant to be your own compass. Another powerful source of noise is the fear of disappointing people. Sometimes we know what feels right for us, but we hesitate because we're worried about how others might react. We don't want to upset somebody. We don't want to create tension. So we start adjusting our decisions based on other people's expectations. The problem is that when we constantly prioritize outside approval, we slowly start to lose touch with our internal direction. Our inner compass doesn't usually sound like a loud voice. It's much quieter than that. Most of the time, it shows up as a feeling of alignment, a sense of something that feels right, even if it's not the easiest opinion. Sometimes following your inner compass can mean making a decision that others don't immediately understand. But alignment often brings something important with us. Clarity. Even when the situation is challenging. External noise, that tends to feel chaotic. It pushes you into multiple directions at once. One voice says go left, another voice says go right. Another voice says you're behind. But your inner compass usually feels different. It's calmer. It's focused. It doesn't shout. It simply points out the direction that aligns with who you are. If you're ever unsure whether something is coming from external noise or your internal compass, there's a simple question you can ask yourself. Remove everyone else's opinion from the situation for a moment. Imagine there were no expectations, no comparison, no pressure from anyone else. Now, what decision would feel most aligned with who you are? And that question often reveals something very important, because external noise usually depends on what other people think. But your internal compass, it doesn't need an audience. It simply reflects what feels true to you. And when you learn to pause long enough to ask that question, something interesting happens. The noise, it begins to quiet down. In your own voice, it becomes easier to hear. One of the reasons external noise can be so powerful is because it sounds logical. Someone gives advice that seems reasonable. You see a path that worked for somebody else. You hear opinions from other people who care about you. And none of these are necessarily wrong. But the problem is that other people's perspectives are based on their experiences, their fears, and their priorities, not yours. So when you rely heavily on outside voices, we can slowly begin living someone else's version of the life that they expect you to look like. Your inner compass is part of what brings the focus back. It reminds you that alignment isn't about following the loudest voice. It's about following the direction that reflects who you truly are. So here's something to think about today. Are the decisions you're making coming from your inner compass or from external noise? Sometimes the most powerful thing that you can do is pause, and pause long enough to hear your own voice again. Because when you reconnect to your inner compass, decisions become clear and life begins to feel much more aligned. Your inner compass is always there. Sometimes it gets buried under the noise, but when you learn to quiet the outside voices and listen carefully to your internal guidance, something powerful happens. You stop chasing validation, you start trusting yourself, and that is so vital. Thanks for spending time with me today. Until next time, keep listening to your inner compass, and remember, you're doing better than you think.